From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, November the 22nd, the year 2017. And now, here they are, waiting for that big turkey day to come, Jim and Rich.
You know, we got together yesterday and had a cup of coffee. Yesterday being Monday, since we record this nonsense on Tuesday. We got together for a cup of coffee for the first time in a while and had what we laughingly referred to as show prep, but I can't remember a thing we talked about.
The other thing is, Jim, I'm not going to, and I think you probably feel the same way, I'm not going to talk to you a second time about something we've already discussed. That's just not in our DNA. So I mean, we're not, because it would have too much of a canned type of feel to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to wind up probably talking about the same stuff, but as far as exactly what we talked about, I have no idea. I don't.
Yeah, I know we started out on.
We started out talking about
probably the Bears.
We started out talking about the Bears.
Yeah.
Because Steve. Help me with his last name again. Rannis.
Oh, Steve Rannis is a Bears fan.
Is a Bears fan. So we started talking about that, and we all are. Even though the 3 and the whatever it is, 3 and 7, 3 and 8,
3 and 6,
no,
3 and 7,
3 and 7.
Yeah, 3 and 7.
3 and 7 record is obviously disappointing. There's things you look at and you go, you know, they're like really close.
Yeah, no, they're close. Is right.
You know, you what was the comment you made about how many losses by?
There was 5 losses by I think it's 5 by 8 points or less.
Yeah,
they had 2 blowout losses, one to the Packers, one to the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean the Packer game was awful.
Not, well, I mean, they played okay, but here's the Jim. I don't know if I talked to you about this or I was talking to somebody else about this. If you read the papers or you listen to talk radio or television, sports wise, you know, they'll always say, "Geez, what a great advantage it is in the bye week." By my own experience, has been a bye is usually an iffy proposition. And my other thought, if you're the Patriots, you know, you're a little banged up as the season goes on. You have a veteran team. You're perennial contenders. The bye week is probably a good week. The Bears, if you recall, leading up to the bye week, their defense was playing excellent. And I think that in the case of a team like the Bears, which is more of a work in progress, the bye week, okay, you get a few people back because the bumps and bruises go away, but you lose some valuable momentum. And I think this is what happened in the Packers game. The offense didn't play great, but the defense, which had been playing extremely well, was okay, but nothing great. Mm-hmm. And I think they were hurt by the bye week.
Yeah.
What do you? I'm looking for your comments on this.
I think so. I thought the offense was that day. I thought the offense left a lot to be desired. Defense, I'm still impressed by the way the defense is looking.
No, the defense looks good. It just wasn't as good as it had been.
It just hadn't been as good as before. Defensively, I look at this ball club and think, this ain't bad. The concern I have right now is obviously with Leonard Floyd out. At least it wasn't a tear, but he's probably done for the year.
Yeah, Jim, I'm glad you brought up Leonard Floyd because all of the people who, had God knows how many things that they felt were Leonard Floyd was shouldn't have been a draft pick, at least in where he was taken at. And I have to tell you, Leonard Floyd is probably the best defensive player we have. That's my opinion.
I think so too.
Hicks would be one, but Floyd. I mean, I tell you what. When I was playing high school football, and even in Little League, that outside people were always emphasized by the coaches. You don't want to let a play get outside of you. Today, the popular term is you set the edge, which is basically the same thing. And Floyd is excellent at that. He is just superb at that. So we're going to lose. We're going to lose something that is not a sexy part of the game, but is very important.
It's a very critical part of the game.
Yeah.
Now, did Hicks get hurt on Sunday?
He got knocked out for a play.
He got knocked out for a play.
He was back.
That was it.
I think with Hicks, a lot of times the problem, if a very fine player, don't get me wrong, but when you have a man that big, and even what was Sunday in the 30s or 40s, probably 30s.
In the 30s.
With football equipment on and playing a lot of downs for a big man, I've seen with Hicks in a few games, is as good as he is, say, for the first half or the first three quarters. He starts to lose some effectiveness in the fourth because he's running out of steam.
Yeah, I was going to say the tank is empty by the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it really is. And it's actually sort of a credit to him because he's going hard all the time, but he just he loses it a little bit in the fourth. So.
Yeah. Trubisky. More I watch him, the more I'm thinking, boy, he's going to be good.
Yeah, I think he will be.
He's getting better.
I think he will be good.
He's getting better as the weeks go on. He's learning more.
Yep.
There's still some of the mistakes, the rookie mistakes, but they're fewer and farther between.
Mm-hmm.
He's mobile.
He is. Yeah, he is.
Boy, you get him a couple of guys who can actually catch the ball.
Well, I really think I don't know what Kevin White would have been like in his first full season. We know that Cam Meredith was a very effective receiver, and he's a big enough guy. I would have really liked to seen how this season would have progressed with those two guys, in addition to other guys they picked up. Because when you look at now, they would probably never have picked up Ingram.
No,
but you look at a guy like Trey McBride or Wright or Wheaton. The initial plan was for those guys to step in and play some plays when the starters, which would have been Meredith and White, were out. And in those roles, those guys would have been excellent. But if we had those two guys and they were effective, say Meredith was effective as he had been the previous year, and White turned into something that was as good as they thought he might have been.
He wouldn't have had. I think after his injuries, he wouldn't have had the speed.
He still got
he still
got speed, but the other thing, the one knock that I would, people have been criticizing Fox and Loggins. The one thing that I am glad to see that they're doing and didn't do as much. I've always been a Daniel since he's come to the Bears, which was just last year. I thought Daniel Brown was a good receiver. And Shaheen, I was waiting to see something from, and we finally saw a little bit the last couple weeks. But I would have, with the injuries to the wide receivers, I would have liked to seen Shaheen and Brown take a bigger role along with Zach Miller. Here's another thing. People have questioned, why did Pace spend a lot of money on Glennon and then draft Trubisky? I think just as important a question is, and there's nothing wrong with this guy as a player, let me say this. Why the heck did we grab Deion Sims when we had a couple of really nice young tight ends already in the on the team? Because to me, Sims is not a super receiver. He's a very good blocker.
You aren't including Zach Miller as a young tight end.
No, but I would have included Zach Miller was part of the mix at the beginning of the season.
All right, yeah, because I was going to say Zach Miller is like 32.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying but Zach Miller is a good receiver. That's my point.
He is, yeah.
We we don't know what Brownaker could do. They keep him around all the time, so he must be showing something. My point would be, I'm not dissing Deion Sims by any. He does what he does. He's good at what he does. But and of course they couldn't have a crystal ball to see they were going to lose their wide receivers, but we could have had some really good play, or maybe some interesting formations or usage of our tight ends to make up for some of that.
And I'm kind of wondering, and when I pulled up here, and I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole interview. I had the score on, and they had Chris Spielman on.
Oh, he's very good.
He's had the last 3 Bear games.
I know he's had. Yeah, okay.
He's had the last 3, so he's
seen them now.
He's seen them now, and he knows them. And he said what he was glad to see that they loosened up the playbook a little bit.
Sure, they did
this
last
week. This weekend.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what they do against the Eagles. Well,
I saw at least one member of the press intimated that, we'd hate to see that, what we've been harping on is why the Bears sort of opened up the playbook a little bit this year. In other words, though, what they're really saying is, we forced them to do it. But I think when you have a guy that you spent that you picked with the second overall pick in the draft, just think back to how they wailed when he got put back in the last exhibition game. We can't have this guy hurt. We have to take care of him. And when you put him out there in a regular season game, I'm not saying that what they're doing is keeping him from getting hurt, because you really can't predict that or avoid it if it's going to happen. But I'm thinking, instead of letting a guy make a lot of mistakes that could really get inside of your head, you know what? They relied heavily on the ground game. They passed. Their passes were safe, more or less safe passes.
Right.
Now, okay, he's got, let's see, how many games has he played? Glennon played 4. We're on game
10. He's had a half a dozen games.
So he's had a half a dozen games. And my thought is this has probably been part of the plan all the way along. This is how he's going to progress. Of course, they won't give the coaching staff any credit for that, because they're the only ones who could think of these things, the press.
Oh, the press, well, yeah. This was their idea all the way along.
Sure, just like it was their idea to draft Trubisky, because I remember at the time they drafted him, that was not.
It was going to be a DB.
It was going to be a DB. It was going to be.
They need help in the backfield, defensive backfield. Going to draft a defensive back.
Yep. So
I still overpaid for him, but I don't care now.
Yeah, I mean, it's over now.
It's over. It's over and done with now.
You're already.
And the team they traded, they made the trade with, and whatever they gave up to them, well, they're 1-9.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, well, I always said that if you thought Pace was so stupid that he traded those draft picks for this one guy, then why, conversely, if he would have kept the draft picks, if he is that stupid, then why would he have made good picks with the ones that he kept? So I'm like, well, okay, which one is it? He's because no matter what he does, he's not going to be as smart as the press. We know that.
Oh, never.
So
never. It was. I was listening on the drive-in just after I left the house, and they had a writer from Philadelphia on, talking about Carson Wentz and his development, and how they really studied him early on, back when he was in college, and did a lot of due diligence, including ownership coming out to meet with him, and how he's developed. And they're trying to see, I guess what they were trying to do is liken it to what are we doing here with Mitch Trubisky.
See, because we don't study these things, we're only armchair experts, so I don't know Philadelphia or their situation that well, but it seems to me, as you look at what's happened with Carson Wentz, that Philadelphia felt that they were, put it this way, I think Carson Wentz is fortunate in the sense that most of the time when a quarterback is drafted higher up in the draft, that's not really a good situation because you're being drafted normally by a bad team. But it looks to me like Carson Wentz went to a team that was just about to make a good step, a good progressive step, and so he benefited from that, and he's been able to really play well. I mean, my question when you bring that up is, say if Mitch Trubisky was in that draft and he was the guy, my feeling is he probably would progress just as quickly as Carson Wentz.
I would think so too. I would think so.
You're
too.
talking about two totally different situations here.
And teams are at the point now when they have that opportunity, those first 5 picks.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a quarterback out there, they're going to go for him. And they're going to build. That's going to be the first of their building blocks.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing with the Bears.
Now, did you see, Jim, the other day, it was in yesterday's Sun-Times in Greenberg's, he does, I think he does Monday and Friday, he does college football. And he seemed to indicate that the 2 big quarterbacks coming out are Josh Rosen and
Rosen.
Sam, the guy from USC. I can't think of his last name.
Rosen definitely.
And he seemed to think that Rosen was the better of the 2, or the more at this point seemed to be more ready.
Anything on a guy down in Oklahoma, Baker
Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how teams are going to view him because he's really a. Put it this way, he marches to his own drummer is the best way I could say it.
Yeah, and after his performance on the field on Saturday, he's not going to start, and he's been stripped of his captaincy, which means probably diddle to him.
Yeah, I mean, a really good talent. There's no question he's talented, and the fact that he's had some. Issues which really in the scope of things are pretty minor, but is that could scare some people away. But he's a good quarterback. Yeah. I don't know how the pros view him, but I've seen him play. He's good. Mm-hmm. So, and is he one of the Heisman favorites?
Yeah,
I thought so. But of course he could have just blown that to smithereens last weekend too. So
you don't grab certain parts of your body on the field while the camera's on you on a national TV game.
Yeah, that's true.
They have a tendency to look down upon that.
Yeah, then you're up there, Mr. Goody Two Shoes, accepting the Heisman trophy.
Yeah, and afterwards, I'm really sorry. I don't know what I did. Please vote for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who else is up there in the Heisman voting? Do you know?
No. Don't know.
I haven't really
followed it enough as it gets down to it.
I don't think they've talked about it very much. I don't think there's
any
clear.
I haven't seen too much about it. I don't. It'll get down to the point where it'll be what, not next Saturday, obviously not this Saturday. Next Saturday, probably the following week. Probably what would that be? December 9th.
That sounds about right to me.
Sounds about when they usually announce those things.
Are they waiting for us to officially say which day it's going to be?
It isn't official until we say so.
Boy, I wish.
Yeah.
What do you think?
We need more power here. By golly, we need to exert our influence. By the way, if you want to listen to our nonsense, and we should thank our pal Bill Caravia for.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you remembered that, Jim.
Bill's been liked our page, and our Facebook page is just simply Armchair Experts.
I like that. Yeah,
we got rid of that. The world
other stuff.
is as I see it.
Yeah.
And,
well, that was a whole different show.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
Local Legends.
Local Legends. Yeah, those were two. Those were two different things.
Back in the TV days.
In the TV days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't get into that. John is
already,
get the smelling salts for John.
John is already scowling as soon as we said TV days.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's okay, John. It's okay.
Anyway. And Connor Barth got a quick ticket out of town.
Yeah, and
what did he ever? I mean, I feel sorry for the guy, but was there ever any explanation for why that kick was so far off? I mean, that was pathetic.
Wow, that was just
at first I didn't know
awful.
what I was actually looking at. I had to look at the replay to say, what the heck was that?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brenneman's comment, not even close. Holy Moses.
Holy Moses is right.
11 of 16 on field goals this season, and 2 of 6 on kicks from 45 to 49 yards. The NFL average from that range is 720, 77 for 107, including 3 block kicks.
By the way, Jim, I have to say, when we had coffee yesterday, you mentioned clock management. Did you happen to catch any of the Seattle-Atlanta game last night?
No.
Now, here's 2 of your top teams, right?
Right.
Coached by Pete Carroll and Dan Quinn.
Right.
If Fox ever ran a game like those 2 guys did, they would just. I would actually vote for him being run out of town on a rail. Here's
happened?
The Seahawks are losing by a TD at the end of the half. They have the ball at the 17 with just enough time to kick a field goal, right? Line up in field goal formation and run a fake field goal that goes like about back to the line of scrimmage, and that's the end of the half. And I'm like, what the heck was that all about?
Oh.
I mean, really, Jim, here was the play. The snap.
This was Seattle doing.
This is Seattle.
With the coached by the great Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll.
The great Pete Carroll, all one word.
Yes. What happened is the holder takes the snap, and the tight end on the left side comes around, and he shovels it to him. And he runs immediately into a lineman, coming across, and down. That's it. It's not even downfield. It's not even close to the end zone. And I'm thinking, what is this guy thinking about?
What did John Gruden have to say about that?
I actually was in the car, and I heard it on the radio.
Oh, okay.
And Boomer Esiason was like, why not get the 3 points before the half? Cut the lead to 4 from 7.
Oh, man.
It makes a difference. And at the end of the game, I don't remember what the final score was, but I know what happened. The end of the game, and there was another thing with the clock management. I'm sitting there with Tommy, and he keeps yelling, "Call a timeout! Call a timeout!" And there was this. Let's see. Atlanta had. Well, let me do this. Atlanta had the ball with 2 minutes and change. Okay, and Seattle had maybe 1 timeout left. So they run a play on second down, and it would have been like 3rd and short. But instead of calling the timeout prior to the 2-minute warning, you hold them on 3rd, and then you get the 2-minute warning, and they got to punt to you, and you have the ball back with pretty much the full 2 minutes.
Yeah.
They wait. They let like 10 seconds run off the clock, go to the 2-minute warning. Okay. So now they stop them on 3rd down. They let them punt. They get the ball back. They drive down the field. And there was quite a few other things. I'm not going to lengthen this show out with the Seattle-Atlanta game. But end of the game, Blair Walsh goes for a 52-yard field goal, missed by this much. It was right on line, but just a little short.
Okay.
And there was one other thing that happened. He actually lined up his team with 10 seconds to go and was going to run one more play with no timeouts. And Tommy's yelling at the TV, "What are you doing? There's no timeouts left. You're never going to get the field goal off." And thank God they decided to, and I don't know if they took a penalty or what, that backed them up 5, and Walsh missed the field goal by about a yard. So, and then the comment was, well, if and I can't remember if they took a penalty, a bad penalty or what. He said, well, you know what? Without that penalty and without that fake field goal in the first half, this is a tie game or they win it. And I'm thinking, I mean, the Bears aren't the greatest, but this compared to anything that they do.
No, I mean that's.
And Quinn is no better.
That's Mark Trestman like. Sunday I looked. I thought the Bears' time management and their personnel decisions late in the game were a little questionable, but nothing as inept as that as far as the clock.
And Quinn, who's supposed to be a defensive coach, Atlanta's winning by 10. Seattle went down the field in 5 plays. One huge pass interference penalty. I know what happened. A completed pass and then a hit out of bounds, which added 15 more yards to a play. One of their guys jumped off sides, gave Seattle 5 more yards, and the next play, boom, into the end zone for a touchdown. And then all of a sudden it's like a 3-point lead, 3-point lead. And I'm like, what the, this, hey, Dan, are you going to fire the defensive coordinator after this game too, after
the Super Bowl and this?
Debacle?
Yeah.
Man, yeah. I will never be a Dan Quinn fan because I think it's the height of gutlessness that you are the strategist on your team, supposedly. You don't take the foot off the gas pedal when you have a big lead in the Super Bowl and try to run some clock. You choose to keep doing what you normally do. That screws the whole thing up. You end up blowing the Super Bowl, and now you fire your defensive coordinator. Well, whose strategy was it that put him in that position to even have to hold the lead like that? Yeah. So that's a whole different story.
It eventually comes to the head man, no matter what.
Yep.
Here's Mark Potish's column about Ryan Pace and the signing of Connor Barth and everything else. He said the signing of Connor Barth was notable because Pace was so sure of himself. Cutting Robbie Gould to draft or sign the next Sebastian Janikowski or Justin Tucker is one thing, but Pace cut Gould, the Bears' all-time leading kicker, in order to sign Barth, who had some Gould quality seasons at his best, but was coming off his worst with the Buccaneers in 2005. Then Gould had, I keep wanting to go Robbie Gould had in a down year with the Bears. And Barth, I'd forgotten Barth had been cut by the Bucs and the Saints before the Bears signed him.
I know he'd been let go by at least one team.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, the thing, Robbie Gould's down year was still a pretty good year, if I remember.
It still wasn't a bad year.
And he's still kicking. He's
still kicking.
He's still 49ers,
He's still
right?
with the 49ers. He's 19 for 21 on field goals with the 49ers this season, including 14 for 15 from 40 yards or more.
Well, he was always good.
He was
with the
always
long
good.
Kick.
6 for 7 from 45 yards or more, and 2 for 2 from 50 yards or more. He was 10 for 10 with the Giants last season. So in 2 years since he was cut, he's 29 for 31 on field goals.
I don't wish anybody bad luck, but that was a mystifying thing. I mean, I didn't know what Connor Barth's history was. I didn't know that he had been an outstanding kicker. I wasn't really that familiar with him, but I'm not familiar with that many kickers to begin with.
Got to play fantasy football, Rich.
But
That's
Robbie Gould is, he was, and he's from what you're saying, he's still
good,
still doing it. And
I keep thinking, I just remember every time the Bears have had a great kicker and they let him go for one reason or another, it becomes a disaster for a couple of years.
Yeah. How are you going to replace somebody like that? You don't have that many of them that
you
are
don't have that many
good.
are talented, I thought, when they let Butler go.
Yeah.
And brought in Carlos Huerta.
Yeah. Was that who they brought in? I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I think he was the first one. And he was just awful.
Mm-hmm.
There was somebody else in there, too. They had Edinger, who had some good years.
Yeah, that's right.
And you let Gould go, and now you have a disaster with the kicking team. They're rare. Good kickers are rare.
Yeah, they are very rare. So the guy they brought in, Santos, he was with the Chiefs, right?
He was with the Chiefs. He had an
injury that knocked him out.
Career with he had a good career with the Chiefs, but there was some injury problems.
Yeah, and then they brought in
or something.
Butker, and he basically just held the job.
He held the job, and he just couldn't come back.
Yeah.
Break time, John. John will go in there and put everything back together.
For sure.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, November the 22nd, year 2017 with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Jim Leon and Rich Massaro and Armchair Experts.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just flipping through the Sun Times here in the notebook, I found one thing here that just amused me. Bills coach Sean McDermott says he's still evaluating whether to give rookie Nathan Peterman another starter return to Tyrod Taylor for Sunday's game at Kansas City. Peterman unraveled in a 54-24 loss to the Chargers by throwing 5 interceptions in the first half before being replaced by Taylor.
That was that's something I'm pretty sure, even if he goes on to a really good career in the NFL, that he's not going to soon forget.
That is it. I didn't understand that when I heard that. When I heard that move. And I think Buffalo is always, Buffalo fans, you got to feel for them. Because for the last few years, we're almost there. We're right in the hunt. We're close. Well, this year they were like in the middle of this, 1.5-2, I think.
Yeah, they
had
a good start.
Now they're 5-5.
Who's the coach there, though?
Sean McDermott.
I'm not familiar with him.
I'm not, you went through the Rex Ryan.
Yeah, Rex Ryan.
Years and but jeez.
Yeah, well,
Tyrod Taylor had 5 interceptions all season.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And McDermott's quarterback rating for his half in the game on Sunday was 17.7.
Yeah. That's about as low as I've heard it go.
That's really you.
Yeah.
You
5 interception in one half, that'll do it to you.
That'll do it. And they were listening to the radio yesterday. They were trying to figure out other sports equivalents to 5 interceptions in a game.
Okay.
And I mean, they were coming up with hockey goaltenders who suddenly can't keep the puck out of the net. I think, didn't Niemi give up 10 goals this year before he was released by somebody?
He could. Well, I think, didn't he give him up 10 goals to the Hawks?
Maybe that might have been the game. I can't remember.
I think he was the starter in that
Was he
game.
the starter in that? And
yeah.
I remember...
I don't think he gave up all 10.
Wasn't it Patrick Law who gave up 10 goals in one game and when he was with Montreal, and they replaced him, and he came off the ice and looked at the coach and said, "I'll never play for you again," and they traded him.
Oh God!
I think it was him.
Well,
I remember a game years ago with the Hawks, and they were playing Pittsburgh, and Al Smith was the goaltender for Pittsburgh, and he had one of those nights. And the hockey writer for one of the papers used to refer to as the goaltender. The goaltender is developing a case of the screaming wim-whams when it happened, and they yanked him off, and he came over to the bench and was on the bench. It threw everything down, and he was just fuming over there. There was a play right in front of him. Some Hawk got checked into the board. Smith grabbed him, put his arm around his neck, pulled him over the bench, and started wailing on him.
Hey, yeah, you get upset.
Al had some anger issues. They were trying to think of other things like, what was it, that game during the Cubs season this year when Lester gave up like 10 runs in a third of an inning.
Yeah, that's right.
That's another one that can be an equivalent of it.
Some days it's just like that.
Where else should we go today with Are we done with the Bears?
Yeah.
Is anything else on your mind regarding them?
No, not really. They I think they've improved. That's all I can say.
I think they've improved. And, as I said at the beginning of the year, I said I found myself feeling strangely optimistic about this team, and strangely optimistic was defined as anywhere from 6 to 9 wins. And 6 wins is still within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it is.
You've got a game against the 49ers, which is certainly winnable.
Sure.
You got a game against the Browns, which is certainly winnable.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Those sometimes are the toughest games, though, because when you're a team that's, I would say better. The Bears are better than both those teams, but not by a ton. Don't forget, the other team looks at that game too as one they can win.
Sure.
And it can be a lot tougher game than you anticipate. Now, if the 49ers re-sign Kaepernick and he's the quarterback when we play them, then I think we got it. But other than that,
well, that's not going to happen.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I noticed today on things that were trending on the computer, this would be on the Yahoo search engine, that Kaepernick popped up, and they're saying that the NFL owners are making his case for collusion by not signing him, and LeBron James definitely knows that it's collusion, that they're blackballing him, and so hey, we got the definitive word. We got it from the king, LeBron.
If the king says it's
the king
collusion,
says it's got to be
collusion,
right? So he knows.
He knows everything because he is the king.
He's the king. So
and
hey. You know what I was going to mention to you, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the air before, but one day this past week we had the 76ers and the Lakers on. I don't know why we had that, but we did. And I said, I'll tell you what, a lot of people think that if LeBron leaves Cleveland, he'll go to L.A. I said, but I think if
you brought up
leaves
going to
Cleveland,
Philadelphia.
Because when you look at, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons has had a nice debut. The other guy I was trying to think of, and I couldn't the other day, but the reason I couldn't is he's injured and he'll be coming back, but was a high draft choice, is Fultz, Markelle Fultz. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a young team. You put a veteran star like LeBron, and LeBron, by the time he gets there, is going to be, 33, 34. So he's still going to be good, but it would be perfect because he's not going to be so dominant at that point, age-wise. I think it'll just be it would be a nice fit for a young team that could do some really good things.
Yeah. You mentioned that, and I never even gave that a thought.
Yeah,
but it would be a good fit personnel-wise.
It would.
Ego-wise.
Well, that I think that's the one thing about LeBron as a player. Thank you, John. I don't think you put it this way. In the situation he's in with Cleveland, he is the king, okay, and that he plays that role. But I think if he was in Philadelphia, I think he is the type of guy who could understand the role that he would need to play there as well. And it wouldn't be so kingly. It might be just princely or something, so.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. What do you got there, John?
Ex-NFL receiver, dead in Dallas area wreck, Terry Glenn.
Oh, Terry Glenn.
I didn't realize that. And former Wimbledon champ, Jana Novotná, died from a long battle with cancer.
She had to be young.
49.
Yeah. But anyway, have you watched any NBA stuff other than the Bulls?
No.
I'll tell you that.
I gotta.
How that league is so popular, I don't know. The basketball is not really.
Well, it never
all that great.
It never is good until you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I guess. I don't.
There is such an imbalance in talent.
Oh man,
in that league.
I'll tell you, is there?
You realize the Boston is going for their 17th win in a row tonight.
Yes.
They started the season 0-2 and haven't lost.
Now, Jim, isn't the imbalance, would you say, if you just, and I know you haven't had time to think about this, but I'm just going to hit you with it. Isn't the imbalance a little bit because of when you talk about a league that's got a salary cap but has God knows how many exceptions to it? I think that adds to your imbalance.
That does.
Yeah.
That does, because you're going to get guys who are going to. There's two things they're looking for: the money and the ring.
Yeah.
And you've got teams that are going to suddenly decide to build these super teams.
Okay. Yeah.
Golden State,
Yeah.
you know,
And they'll pay the whatever
they'll
the luxury
pay
tax or whatever.
they'll
they gotta
pay they'll pay the price for it.
Yeah.
They'll pay the price for it.
Well, I remember in the 80s, I was a season ticket holder for the Bulls, and one of the guys that was, there was four of us, and Al Albert, who was one of the guys, was a real basketball fan and was up on it. And he said, hey, they're going to have a thing called the salary cap, because the league was in sad shape at that point. This is prior to Michael Jordan coming in. And well, we said, well, what's that? And he explained it, that the salary cap was put in because the league was probably in danger of going belly up. So they had to rein in spending, and the salary cap was what did it. Now, I would say within the last couple of years, I haven't seen them harp on it, but a couple sports writers have said, well, now, wait a minute. The NBA now is a really successful enterprise. Why do they even have the salary cap anymore? And I'm like, you're right, because the initial reason for it is ended, okay, to actually save the league from itself. And you're not in that situation anymore. So why even have that?
Yeah, and like you said, that there were so many exceptions to it that really,
Yeah, it's almost like there is no salary
it's
cap.
like there is no salary cap to it. Where you go in the other, you go the other direction, you go to the NHL, and they've got a salary cap, and it's a hard cap.
A hard cap, yeah. Yeah.
So that's provided some balance to the league. You still wind up some instances with some bad teams.
Sure. But think about it, though, Jim, when Edmonton was a poor team a few years ago. Now they're, I don't know what they're doing this year.
7-11.
But they...
7-11-2.
But I think they were a playoff team last year.
Yeah.
People would probably have projected them as a playoff team this year, and they still could be.
Yeah.
Because isn't that where McDavid is, Connor McDavid?
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It has. So you may have bad teams, but if they draft intelligently, especially in a game like hockey, where your draft picks can come up and really have an impact on your team quickly, they can bounce back pretty quick.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I look at the Bulls, and I've got to sit and watch them. Markkanen, I think, is, that's Dirk Nowitzki light right now. Or
Yeah, I think he looks like he's the real deal.
Only rookie in the top 5 or 10 in rebounds right now.
Yeah, in fact, here's a guy that, of course, the sports writers are always going to go for the scoring, but here's a guy who is probably thought of as going to be somebody who's going to be more of an offensive threat, but he's more than that. And the other day when they lost to Phoenix, he had 20-some points and like 13 rebounds. So he seems like a guy who's willing to do the work. It'll be an interesting thing. My own personal feeling is Niko Mirotic has put himself in like purgatory.
He is. They can't do anything. I don't know what the deal was or why it was, but they said they can't do anything as far as making any kind of deal until January.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is if you think about this, Jim, are they going to find a market for Niko? Because what they pointed out, and this is where, the sports writers do us a service because you get these nuggets. What they're saying is he was a free agent this past summer. Okay, the Bulls basically have set the market because nobody was offering him $12 million a year, which is what he got. I think $12 million a year for 2 years with the Bulls. So who's going to take him when the Bulls are the ones who have set the market?
They said, yeah.
I mean, unless somebody really needs a big guy who's a pretty good shooter, towards playoff time, maybe then they'll swallow the salary. But nobody wanted him for that money this summer, so why would they want him now?
Right.
So he's sort of stuck. Why did they say this may change in January?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, I'm curious about that.
I read that, and I was trying to remember why, and I was hoping you had.
No, I don't know. That the only thing I read is, and which made sense to me is, if you weren't going to pay as another team, you weren't going to pay that kind of money for him when you could have got him and not given up anything.
Yeah.
Why would you pay? Why would you trade for his salary now?
Why would you trade for it now?
Yeah.
I just had another thing I just happened to glance at again, a little sports wire, and it made me wonder about this. There's nobody playing basketball right now named Kirk Cousins, is there?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
I know DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah, DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah,
why? What? Is there?
There's
an
item. There's an item in here that Kirk Cousins was ejected for raising his elbows near Russell Westbrook's face, resulting in a flagrant foul that knocked Westbrook to the floor, holding his head in the Pelicans' 114-107 victory over the visiting Thunder.
Yeah, well, that had to be DeMarcus Cousins. Yeah. By the way, did you see what the heck?
And he stood over him and went, "You like that?"
Jim, you know what? There literally have been so many great names that I've come across in the last month that I have not texted you any of them because I'd be texting you every day. But there's a kid in high school basketball, and I'm not going to be anywhere close to the first name, but say it's like Demarius Splunge. Splunge, and I'm like, oh my God! And he's supposed to be one of the better players on one of the public league teams, and I'm like, I'm going to have a good time with this one.
Oh my God, that's something you get tested for.
Yeah. Oh man,
I got a touch of the splunge.
I think these are the types of conversations that got us in hot water on the football broadcast.
Well, yeah, and I think if they didn't like,
really what did it, Jim, is when our one kicker that 1 year, I said his name sounded like one of the Schmengi brothers. I don't think that went over too well.
I don't think that went over too well.
No.
Even after we did our disclosure, and I mean, geez, we were getting the big bucks over there too.
Yeah. Really? Oh man!
That free hamburger just only because we
went and begged for it.
We begged for it.
Yeah. Well, no. Once we the bad part of losing that gig was we had finally gotten Strawn's ear, and he was going to probably feed us every game.
That's right.
And then we lose the gig. Isn't that just the way it goes?
Yeah, that's just the way things are.
Yeah.
Tell the story about.
Joe LeBeck.
Joe LeBeck.
Yeah.
I think it's a great story.
Yeah. I'll cut to the chase. Tony, who's the head custodian, head maintenance guy in the library, his son-in-law is Joe LeBeck. And he mentioned Joe's name to me. And I said, oh, yeah, I know who Joe LeBeck is. And Tony says, yeah, Joe's got a strikeout record at Ridgewood. And I was thinking, I'm thinking career strikeouts. I didn't know exactly what, and Tony wasn't sure either. So I called FERC and said, hey, explained the situation to him. And I said, Joe LeBeck, strikeouts. And he says, oh my God, Rich. He goes, he doesn't just hold the Ridgewood record. He goes, it's not even the state record. It's a national record. And he goes, and it's probably never going to be broken. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, he struck out 40 guys in one game. And I'm like, what are you talking 40 guys in one game? And he told me, he said they played a 7-inning game. I think it was with Evergreen Park. And Joe struck out 19. And at the end of 7, it was 1-1. And they had rain. So the game was suspended. Now, I'm pretty sure the way FERC told me that a couple days later, they were going to continue the game. somebody else told me, it might have been Tony, said it was a week later. Ferk, I don't know which one is right, but it doesn't matter. But Joe came to Ferk and said, listen, I want to finish this game. And Joe was a good kid, and he knew himself well. So Ferk said, okay, go ahead. So he pitched 8 more innings and struck out 21 more guys. Now so he struck out 40 guys. And Ferk tells me, he says, and here's the real thing. He said he lost the game. And I said, well, what happened? He said in the top of the 15th, he said Joe was the 4th hitter, and he said the third hitter was the catcher, Nick Abernathy, and Nick got on with a single or a double or something. So Ferk wanted Joe to bunt. And he said the first pitch came, and I don't know if Joe fouled it off or he missed it. So now Joe calls timeout, and he goes down to see Ferk at third. And he says, Coach, come on. He goes, this is my game, 1-1 tie. He said, give me a chance to knock this run in. And Ferk was like skeptical, but he goes, yeah, you know what? You did earn the chance to knock the run in. So he let him hit, and Ferk says he popped up to the pitcher. He said they didn't get the run in, and he said the next inning he gave up a run in the bottom of the 8th, and we lost the game 2-1. So he struck out 40 and lost.
Joe Lebec, you are in our Hall of the Very Good.
You are, definitely, Joe.
You get an honorable mention, and you enter our Hall of the Very Good along with Jigger Stats with his 3,400 plus hits in the minor leagues, and Oyster Joe Martina with his 349 victories in the in the minor leagues, and his 6 victories in his one season with the world champion Washington Senators back in the 20s.
Jim, did I ever tell you the story about? I'll preface this by saying I have a friend who's trying to convince everybody that all of these major league sports events are fixed.
Oh, of course.
And
TV,
not so
TV and Joe Buck.
Yeah. Back when we were in high school, I was not a Packers fan, and the Packers and the Colts were playing an important game, and whoever won was going to end up in first place in the that would be the Western Division. And Johnny Unitas was the quarterback, and he's driving the Colts, one of his patented drives to take the lead. And at one point, he's back to pass, and his receivers are covered, and he sees an opening, he starts to run, and he's holding the ball just in his right hand, and all of a sudden, the ball is out of his right hand. The Packers recover. I'll never forget, we were sitting in Phil Williams's front room, watching this game on a Sunday afternoon. I'm thinking to myself, I won't use the words, but I'm thinking this game is fixed. I mean, he just dropped that ball, and nobody even hit him. Well, I don't know if it was that same year or the next year. I'm playing high school football, and we had a guy on our team who really good football player, Mark Carlson.
Sure.
We're playing Fenton at Fenton. It's a close game. And Mark takes off down the sideline, and there's not a Fenton player within 10 yards of him. He's gone, okay? And he's pumping, and all of a sudden, the ball flies out of his arms. And the next closest player was the Fenton guy 10 yards away. Well, the ball's up in the air. He runs under it. He catches it. We lose the ball. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, maybe that NFL game wasn't fixed because nobody touched Carlson, okay? The ball just flew out. He was pumping so hard. So to me, what I always think is there are a lot of people who, I've been involved in a lot of games and a lot of, as a player, a coach, an official. Odd things just happen. I mean, you see things happen that you never think you'll ever see. And, just because you say they're the pros, it doesn't mean it can't happen to them. So, I just had that story came to me after the Joe Lebec story because it just...
There is always the strange things. You brought that up, and it made me think of a Hawk game years ago. Dennis DeJordy
Okay.
was the goaltender.
Okay.
And I almost want to say it was against Detroit. Somebody hit one into the corner, and I think it was in the old stadium in Detroit, the old Olympia, where the Zamboni would come out of a
Okay.
gate in the corner. Well, either the gate wasn't closed completely or something happened to it, but that puck hit the corner right at the seam between the doors. And you watch that puck come back towards the goaltender and just curled around as it got in front of DeJordy and went right into the corner of the net. And DeJordy stood there like, what was that? And whoever did the game, and it might have been Jim West in those days, go, well, I've never seen anything like that one before.
Jim, the other thing you have to take in consideration, my guess, I'll just say, I'll be conservative. 70% of the guys who play the game, and I don't care if they're pros or little leaguers, have no clue what the rules are. I mean, the rules.
Yeah.
I'm umpiring a game this year at Horner Park.
Yeah.
My game gets done, and so the next field is right next to ours. So I watched a little bit of the next game. Well, just as I turn around to watch, there's a play where the pitcher couldn't pick the ball up, but he kicked the ball over to the first baseman, and I think the guy was actually safe. Well, there's a guy on the one team that was playing. Keith Dickens has been around forever, and this guy is a really good player, but he wants to argue about anything, even when the play actually went for his team. His guy was safe, so there was no issue at all. But he turns around, he looks at me, and he goes, you can't, a guy can't be out if the pitcher kicks the ball to the first baseman. I'm like, why?
Why not?
I go, you think that's an advantage for him to kick it instead of throw it? I go, I mean, if it was the way you do things, we'd all be kicking the ball over there.
Yeah.
So then I thought about it, and I figured, I'm not totally sure on this, but I couldn't think of any advantage to that. But I called my boss, Mike Planthaber, ran it by him. He goes, Rich, he goes, the same thing. He goes, if the ball is lying back at the pitcher and bounces off of him and goes to first, right? That's a good play, right?
That's right.
I said, yeah. He says, well, that's no difference. He said, you could kick it. I mean, the same thing I said, there is no advantage to kicking it. But this guy insisted, you can't kick the ball. And I'm like,
Remember,
use common sense. Who would want to kick the ball unless they were desperate? That's the only way they could do it.
I mean, your analogy about that, I remember Pete Rose lining into a double play off Lee Smith's back to end the game.
Yeah.
And Harry going, the good Lord wants the Cubs to win.
Well, I got a chance to call a play that now I'm going to say 95%, probably 90.
I'm watching John redecorate
Okay.
while we're doing this.
Probably 99% of your baseball, softball players would not get this play right. And I got this because I watched the Cubs. But I got a chance in a girls' softball game that I umpired to make this call. I mean, you're not looking to make the call. But the situation was, especially in women's softball, where this case it was the second baseman, was playing up a little bit. Doesn't have a good arm, so she wants to make a shorter throw, so she's playing up. Runner on first, the ball goes past the second baseman and hits the runner. Right away, the coach is, well, she's out. I know she's not out. And he said, well, no. I said, listen, the rule says, and the reason that most of the time the runner is out, the fielder has got to have the opportunity to field the ball. Yeah. I said, she had an opportunity to field the ball. It went past her and hit the runner, so the ball's live. Oh, no. Hey, that's the rule. You want me to,
Get
if you
the
got
book
a rule
out.
book, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Although I didn't have to get the rule book, but I mean that's one that most people would say have no clue about. What are you looking at?
I was
there,
looking
Jim?
at the insignia on your sweater there. I just realized that Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so the Flames, the team, the Flames, Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, I'm impressed. You're a Hall of Fame, another Hall of Fame.
Yeah, gonna go for
Yeah.
Gonna go for a two-time Hall of Famer in that one.
Wow.
So-
And I think we should go to the Broadcast Hall of Fame, too, really. With this,
Yeah, what
you
the
know,
heck?
You know. A couple of things before we wrap up and get out of here. The Hall of Fame ballot for 2018.
Oh, you found it.
Well, it doesn't have the complete list, but there's certainly players that are certainly strong consideration. Last year, Trevor Hoffman and Vladimir Guerrero just missed. But you got Chipper Jones, Jim Thome.
Okay.
Those I think are a couple of good shots. You still have the presence of Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and I know you feel you can't talk about the Hall of Fame unless they're in it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they
Honestly, I think within the next 2 years, you're going to see them in there.
yeah. I mean, I don't see.
The numbers support it.
Yeah. Well,
You
yeah.
can't
think.
argue with it.
No.
You can't argue with it, and there's always the discussions regarding relief pitchers. And in this article, John Grachowski, who's a numbers guy, talked about relief pitchers. Hoffman has a 28.4 WAR, wins above replacement.
Mm-hmm.
The average relief pitcher has a 40.6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's surprising. But, he just says, but voters are just starting to come to grips with what to do with relief pitchers. There are only 5 pitchers in the Hall who relieved in at least 50% of their appearances, and numbers are skewed, really, by Dennis Eckersley, who compiled 45.7 of his 62.5 career WAR as a starter.
What about, Jim, when you say Hoyt Wilhelm actually started quite a bit, too?
He
at
started
one
quite a
point
bit
in
early in his career.
Yeah, and he's a Hall of Famer, right?
Yes. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers.
Yeah, I'm not asking
Yeah.
you to.
No,
but
I
was thinking of.
that's
so
a name.
Who are the other people? Did he name any of the other people that are?
He did not, but as I'm thinking of it, you've got Suter.
Okay, see, he never started.
He never started.
You're not going to think all of them.
No, I can't think. I have looked that up as I've gone through trying to start to develop our list of who belongs in the Hall of Fame and who doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'd be curious to know because I think it's really a bad judgment or an injustice that Lee Smith is not there.
Exactly.
I mean, he was a dominant reliever.
Exactly.
Closer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just also going to bring up the issue regarding starting pitching since we talked about Clemens here.
Mm-hmm.
For that, others on the ballot, Mike Mussina with an 83.0 WAR and 63.8 JAWS. I don't remember what JAWS is. Kurt Schilling with a 79.9 WAR and 64.5 JAWS. It was kind of interesting, too. I noticed this morning somebody posted a item on the Facebook. In fact, George Hoffman from WBBM. He said, on the Hall of Fame ballot this year, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Kurt Schilling.
Mm-hmm.
Out of those 4, which one don't you vote for?
I'd vote for all 4 of them. To be honest, I mean, are you saying that you can only vote for 3?
No, he just threw it out there and said included in the Hall of Fame ballot are this. Which one don't you vote for?
I think they're all. Put it this way, to me, they're all strong candidates as far as I'm concerned. When you take out, I don't even actually know, other than he's grouped in with the steroids guys, why Sammy Sosa is even controversial. He was a guy who hustled. He's a guy who hit for power. He was really a very important guy on the teams he played with.
That puzzles me.
Yeah,
that really does puzzle me. Why, other than the steroid issue,
right?
Mark McGwire, the steroid issue. I don't know if he'll ever get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, really. I mean, he probably is a guy who should get in the Hall of Fame.
At least he's done service for the game. Afterwards, he's been a hitting coach.
Well, think about it this way, Jim. Babe Ruth was huge in bringing the game back after the Black Sox scandal. Jackie Robinson is huge for being the first acknowledged black player.
Right, break the
You know,
racial barrier.
even though there were black players prior to Jackie Robinson, they're too far back for anybody to count, I guess.
Louis
That must be the
Sucks
theory.
Alexis.
Yeah, but no, they were back in the 1880s.
Yeah.
There were black players, and I would say that if those are arguments, I'm not saying that's a total argument for those guys, but those are part of the argument for them being where they are. Then Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire should get strong consideration for the same reason. Because if people go back, baseball was really suffering badly because of the strike
After the
that
strike.
canceled the season, and people were really ticked off. And the Sosa McGwire home run race brought people back to the park and back into the fold of baseball.
Yeah, you look at Sosa. He was the first and only player to exceed 60 home runs in the season, and he did it 3 times.
Yeah. So you know what, I still say, I'm not an expert on this. I know steroids have a positive effect, but you still have to hit. I mean, do you realize what it takes to hit over 60 home runs in any major league season? That's a lot of home runs.
Yeah,
I mean, steroids didn't do it all.
yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. And when the guy I really have a problem getting my mind around, where steroids helped him at all, was Roger Clemens, who, I don't know how much that helps a pitcher. I could see where you could say a batter, it adds strength, so it might add some length to what the balls you hit. But a pitcher, Clemens was already a fireballer prior to him ever being accused of taking steroids. So is the complaint that it lengthened his career a little bit? That must be the complaint.
I think the complaint is that, and I also think the complaint about Bonds is his most productive years were after 35.
Well, I'm not talking Bonds. I'm
talking,
Clemens.
again, that's another one where they started to point at him with the steroids.
Yeah.
But Clemens, I don't understand. Oh, John wants to remind me, WRHS FM.
Oh.
89.7 in Norwich. Thank you. Okay.
Very
I just do what John tells me.
Of course.
I forgot where I was
You were
going.
talking about Clemens.
Oh, Clemens. I don't know. Did it add a half a mile? Did it add a mile to his fastball?
Yeah, I don't know why it was how much of an advantage for a pitcher, and he seems to be the only pitcher that's actually ever mentioned in connection with steroids. I mean, everybody else, when they had that big dog and pony show in front of Congress, was a position player.
Rafael Palmeiro is going to be the only one with over 500 home runs. It's not going to make. Well, it's going to be one of them that apparently, with over 500 home runs, isn't going to make it in the Hall of Fame. And I think it was his biggest problem was shaking his finger at Congress.
Yeah.
And then getting tested positive.
What people should really, I like to read, obviously, about these guys and if they have books and whatnot. But when the thing that's one of the things that's important to me, and there was a guy, I read Pudge Rodriguez's book, and he the first thing he says in his book is, "I never took steroids." Okay. He explains, he explains what was happening in his life, why he all of a sudden trimmed down when I don't know if it was after he went back to the Rangers or whatever, but he talks about Juan Gonzalez, and if you look at Juan Gonzalez's career, his numbers and stuff, like if I said the name Juan Gonzalez right off the top of your head, what would your impression be? Good guy, bad guy?
Good
Don't
guy.
know much about him.
Good guy.
And
Good ball player.
apparently he was a great teammate and a very productive player. When you think about it, though, that team, the Rangers, and I never realized this either, they actually were really good in the 90s, and I think they lost to the Yankees 3 straight years in the playoffs. I didn't even realize they had made the playoffs or that good.
That's surprising.
But Juan Gonzalez, when you listen to Rodriguez, you look at this guy's numbers and you look at the teams he played on, and he was a solid citizen. There's no scandal next to his name. Why is a guy like that? And I'll bet you any money. I mean, he's probably already been under consideration. He's not going to get any support. So
I'd have to go look at his numbers. He should have enough. Should have enough years. The other names that I was thinking of regarding the steroids and that, Caminiti, all of a sudden his numbers became inflated. I think he admitted he took it, and he's dead.
Yeah.
Brady Anderson came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, 50 home runs in a season.
Yeah. And guess what? Spoken of very highly by Cal Ripken. They were very good buddies. And you know what? Even though Anderson was much younger than Ripken, he said that he was one of the guys who was, always had the right thing to say in keeping him going for the record that Ripken set.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know the first thing everybody says is Brady Anderson, the 50 home. But he said, great guy, great teammate, good ball player. The other guy, when Chipper Jones had his biography out recently, the guy he loved as a teammate and a guy that I always looked like with the stink eye was Gary Sheffield. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And really, now that I've actually seen Gary Sheffield with Pedro Martinez on that
on the Fox,
I go, those guys. First off, those guys know what the heck they're talking about, and they seem like really good guys. So why my impression of at least Sheffield was bad, I have no clue.
Couldn't tell you. And my impression of Alex Rodriguez after his allegations of steroids and everything else and sitting out a season was always bad. But you go back and look at his career, decent, good, great career.
Yeah.
He hasn't hit his 5 years yet, has he? No. No. But watch his work on TV.
Yeah.
I was impressed by him.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. Those guys, yeah. I think the guy who's the weakest is Frank Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think the big hurt is hurting for money, so they threw him a gig.
They threw him a gig.
Yeah.
Big Poppy, I think is
Big Pop
is funny.
Yeah, he's Big Poppy.
He's just funny. I think when who was it? Was it Pedroia that got signed for a long-term contract with Boston? And I can't remember, but they're having the press conference down on the field, table set down on the field, and all of a sudden you see Big Poppy come out of the dugout and walk over to second base, grab the base, came walking over to the table where they were sitting and put it down in front of him, and he said, "Well, you own it now."
Big Poppy,
and then left.
Now, how come his name? Well, I guess his name has been mentioned with steroids, but because when he was in Minnesota, he was not all that. But
no, I think he had to do some.
I think he might have.
Yeah, I think he had to do some time because of that.
The other guy that everybody talks positive about, at least in terms of his hitting, one of the best is Ramirez, Manny Ramirez.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And certainly been a good teacher.
Yeah, he cleaned up his act.
He cleaned up his act, and he's been a good teacher and a good coach after the game. All right, we ran over, but then again,
sure did.
But then again, we have a tendency to suddenly get on a topic at the end of the show and not figure out when to stop.
Look at John. I think
he's
just looking into the.
He is.
He's looking into into space, and I think he's got a certain person in mind that he's got a bad ending pending.
Just listen. Make the string bean casserole.
That's it.
Get the string bean casserole ready. You got the cranberries. You got that all set. Are you going to Wisconsin or are you having dinner? You and Oscar are having dinner here? Okay.
And
And you got
listen to your police and fire scanner.
Listen to your scanner. You got your turkey. How big of a turkey?
It's 6 pounds right behind you.
Okay. No. Okay. All right. That's good.
And mashed potatoes.
All right.
Very good.
You're ready.
That's right.
And you got to have gravy.
And God bless everybody, John.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Even those people that you're really saying, yeah, Rich, baloney. So anyway,
It's the holiday season, John.
Yeah.
Smile. When I look at that and I thought of the you did that, it made me think of the lady who used to be the receptionist down front when I worked for the Boy Scouts, and I'd walk by Geneva and look at her with a smile like that, and I'd always hear her go, "Work on your sincerity."
there you go. There you go.
So you do that, John. We have anybody we want to add to the Thanksgiving turkey list?
No, let's not go there.
We could be here until 3. Yeah, we'd be here for another 2 hours if we added all that. So in the meantime, let's get out of here, and we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. Hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoy time with family and friends, and we'll catch up with you again in couple 2-3 weeks. The 5th, December 5th, is when we tape this nonsense the next time for broadcast on the 6th. All right, we're out of here.
Alrighty.
Gentlemen, I just want to say I wish you and Jim and Rich a very happy Thanksgiving, and I'm very thankful that I have great friends like you
Oh,
to
thanks,
be
Jim.
here, part of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network.
John,
So you guys are great.
Thank you.
Like I told you the very first time I met you, and the very first time you came down to the studios there, you are my family.
Oh, thank you, John.
Oh,
We
John,
appreciate
you old
that.
softy, you know.
Man, I'm
Yeah,
telling you.
You know. God.
Thanks, John.
We'll have a big group hug when this is done.
Thanks. Oh,
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, maybe not. All right. That's it. We're out of here. We're taillights.
Take care, John.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John Avita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, November the 22nd on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John Avita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zefalik of WRHS FM Norge and the executive producer of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, November the 21st, the year 2017. And once again, on behalf of the entire staff of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and WRHS FM Radio, have a very happy and enjoyable Thanksgiving. And this is 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and Jack Frost 88.1 WXMS Harwood Heights.